I'm going to ask Reverend Alderman Davis if she would be so kind as to do the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And for those who have not been here for a while, we'll be using this flag for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Loving God, remembering that March is Women's History Month, we praise and thank you for all the cherished women and girls in our lives now and in the past. Grandmothers, mothers, wives, daughters, granddaughters, and friends. Guide us to make decisions that will continually honor and empower them. Amen.
I'll now read the ethics statement. If any member if any members know of any conflict of interest or appearance of a conflict of interest concerning matters on the agenda, please so state at this time. Not seeing any response to that, I take it there is no conflict. And obviously, if one arises during the middle of the meeting because of a topic comes up, please identify it at that time. Madam Clerk, is there anybody who signed up for public comment?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Motion to go into public comment.
thank you. There's a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? Madam Clerk?
Carol Lee Morris.
Yes, ma'am. You just come up here and there's a little button that you push and your microphone should turn red.
Good morning, Aldermen and community members. I didn't expect to be first, but that's just fine. I'll be very brief. About a year ago, you aldermen agreed to sell the 427 acres to the North Carolina Resources Commission. That was a wonderful decision. We didn't really expect it, but that was great. Now I understand there was a request, and I just found this out, to extend that contract. They ran into some difficulties with surveying or whatever it was. That happens. There's a lot going on around here. So I understand you've tabled the idea of accepting an extension. This is only for a few months. You have just if you don't table it, you have to go back to the drawing board. And I also read in the State Port Pilot a statement that the budget for you guys, for Southport, is in good shape. You have plenty of money. So money's really not an issue. There are values more than money, and the environment is a great value. You have the opportunity here to see that that value continues, not just for you, but for your children, your grandchildren, for those of us in your larger community, your neighbors. So please do bring that up again and vote to extend that. It won't be long, 3 or 4 months, you won't even notice it. So thank you.
Excuse me, could you just state your name and address, please?
I'm sorry.
Your name and address.
I'm sorry. It's Carol Lee. That's spelled all together. Morris. And the address is 6497 Walden Pond Lane in Southport.
Thank you.
Okay. Is anything else? Okay.
Ma'am, the only other thing is, and this applies to everybody who's going to speak, if you want to have comment back from us, if you would please let the clerk know how we contact you, and we'll call you and talk to you.
Thank you, Rick.
Next, ma'am.
Elisa Treadway.
Good morning. Elisa Treadway, 6482 Rolling Run Road, Southport. I am sharing the concerns of Carolee Morris this morning and asking each of you to consider tabling the extension of the purchase of the property. I know that this has been a piece of property that has been in your portfolio for an extended amount of time. I too would like to see this returned to its natural, remain in its natural habitat. And I urge each of you to please reconsider and bring this back to a vote to extend the contract. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Terry Duff.
Good morning. My name is Terry Duff. I reside at 6519 Walden Pond Lane, Southport, North Carolina. I'm speaking to the same issue that both Carolee and Elisa have brought up. This has been an ongoing proverbial goat rodeo for over 11 years. It started with Southport City's acquisition of the land back in 2006, where they did not do their due diligence and ended up paying $1.689 million back when they violated the terms of the grant. That's a historical perspective. And then it was, let's build a sewer plant out there after the DEQ shut down Southport for dumping raw sewage into the Cape Fear. I'm sorry, the intercoastal. Then it was, let's mine it. Let's mine it, extract clay and sand, sell it to Matsu, let Pelote Mining rape the landscape, and we'll get the land back, and then we can sell it and make money. I doubt very much for any member of the board, perhaps some, who's actually walked that property. Or do I even get an answer? Good, so several people did. So when it was annexed in 2006, has anybody read the annexation agreement? Probably not, 2006. And if you want copious copies, that's why I'm running it. Want to find out?
Sir, I've read every page that goes to that document. Every document, everything about it.
Yeah, oh, you have, okay, so what are the rules for that land?
The rules here, sir, is we're not going to get into a debate. You have public comment.
Okay.
Please make your public comment.
Okay, so my little preamble, let me take a step back and ask some fundamental questions, procedural questions, Rich. We're publicly allowed to make comments. You just said that, correct? And then we'll get back to you in private. Everybody in this room, if I ask a question or any other member of the audience asks a question, where's the respective feedback? Forget about me. You have maybe 50 people in the room. I don't know how many people are on the webcast. So you give me an answer about this property, it comes to me. How does the respective wider audience get a response? The answer is they don't. Right?
When you have time, we can all go and discuss what the School of Government suggests that how these meetings are run, and as they are in fact run throughout the state of North Carolina.
Okay, but that did not answer my question. I'm not trying to be confrontational. I ask a binary question, and I don't get a binary answer. So you respond to me privately, an email, a phone call, whatever that might be. The 50 people in this room, 40, whatever the number might be, perhaps 100 on the webcast. How do they get the answers to the public quorum when we ask questions? Not me, anybody. How does the general public get an answer? And we can take it offline, but the answer is they don't. So I'll answer my own question. They don't get that. So thank you for that public commentary and how we get responses. Are these meetings recorded and is there an audio transcript? And if there are, is the audio transcript ADA compliant? There are many older people that can't hear. These are concerns that your citizens, I don't live in the city of Southport, that some of you will always remind me that I don't live in the city and I can't vote. Fine. What about you constituents that do reside in the city of Southport? Are those audio transcripts produced? Are they posted on the website? And are they ADA compliant? Let me guess. Somebody will get back to me. And perhaps I've missed this out of the last 2 years I've been coming to these Alderman meetings. What happened to the ethics statement that used to be read in a public forum? Do we still read that at the beginning of every meeting?
You came in late, right, sir?
Obviously, Rich, don't ask.
Because we just went over that.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask, I don't need condescending and belittling comments. And that's directed to anybody, because it's getting a little tiresome after a while. So this dystopian nightmare continues. That property, again, was annexed. The way the ordinance reads or the annexation agreement reads, they have to take care of that property like any other city-owned property. And you can find your own documents online. That's what it states. Who's ever picked up trash on that property? Their answer is nobody. Who's picked up the refrigerator, the TV, the old toilets? Anybody? The answer is no. So shame on this city for claiming it's their property and not taking care of it. I don't want to hear somebody's a good steward of property when they're not. So when I walked that property yesterday, and Todd, I did get permission, and the officer said he would close with you. Do you also know that that's a historical site? Does anybody understand that? I bet the answer again is no. There was a battle fought there in February of 1865 where 300 Union troops attempted to cross the small stream back there. They were repulsed. Then another 1,000 came and they made it up to Fort Anderson. So there's actually historical perspective beyond just the ecological disaster it will be if we don't know what the city is doing. So part of our collective concern is the lack of transparency. We've had commitments from Mayor Dove, what would be done. We've had commitments from Dr. Hayden. And every time the administration changes, every single time, this dystopian nightmare, 11 years, it changes every time there's a change in administration. Sometimes it's for political reasons. Sometimes it's what I refer to as the stench of money. When is somebody going to put a stake in the ground, define what's being done, stick to what's being done, and openly transparent in what they're doing? It's never happened in 11 years. So we're asking for an extension to allow the NCWRC to actually fulfill their work. The survey is done. Is anybody aware of that? Again, no answer. Somebody will get back to me. I got it. My level of frustration, I'm mirroring what everybody is feeling, not only in our community, but the people in your own town that can vote. So if somebody wants to tell me, Terry, it doesn't really matter what your opinion is, you can't vote, which I've heard from members of the city, I don't really care. We can help influence the vote that comes up whenever the next election is. But it's not about voting. It's not about extending somebody's term. It's not about quote unquote fiduciary responsibility. There's something it's something that transcends fiduciary, something that transcends political posturing. It's called doing the right ethical and moral thing. So when the NCWRC stands up here, Mr. Ben Solomon, and he's ridiculed, I was publicly embarrassed. When somebody comes up here and is doing their respective due diligence, explaining what the roadblocks are, and some of you work for state government, some of you are in the police system. We all know how bureaucracy works. Do you have any idea how long it took me to get that paperwork out of Bolivia? That's why I'm late. Again, the classic bureaucracy, right? Stall, we'll get it to you soon. I physically have to go up there and do this. That's an embarrassment. So as we go back to look what the city of Southport is trying to do, we need the transparency. We need to clearly understand the ramifications of what's being done, who it's being done with. And belittling an individual from NCWRC, again, Ben Solomon, it was an embarrassment sitting in the audience. You may have a difference of opinion of what he was articulating, why he wanted the extension. His extension had nothing to do with him. It's state bureaucracy. You really think the state attorney general is going to sign off on $637,000,000 without reviewing? That's either a very naive perspective or quite an ignorant perspective. How long does it take to survey a piece of property? Obviously, a long time. How many other buildings are going up in Brunswick County, the fastest growing county in North Carolina? You know how hard it is to find anybody to get anything done in a timely fashion? So belittling somebody who comes in here trying to do the right thing, quite frankly, it's beyond the scope of my imagination. And I actually called Ben up. I'm not part of this board. And I apologize from the citizens that reside out on Bethel Road. That should never happen in a public forum. You can have your own respective different views, but castigating somebody publicly, and perhaps there was a private apology later on, but the public hanging the private apology, that doesn't bode well for any elected official. So we're asking the board to relook at their decision, the 4-3 vote, reevaluate the ramifications of what's being done, factor in now that there's now a historical documentation for that. And if anybody wants copies, I will give you copies. So it transcends the environmental issues, the historic perspective. It's the quality of life and the fact that if somebody thinks they can make more money by selling it to somebody else, that's beyond me. Whatever you decide to do, you're starting from day one all over again. So what difference does it make whether you extend it 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months? If you throw the baby out with the bathwater, you're starting completely over again. Completely. And reference to what Boiling Springs is doing, well, I actually called that company up that did that. They've heard nobody from Southport. So making a reference to, well, Boiling Spring does this and this company does this, they've never heard from anybody in Southport. So in closing, I'm asking respectfully, although you might think I'm not being respectful, I am holding back. And we're looking for a decision that will be agreeable to all parties. I have documentation requests into the city for any relationship, any conversations held between city officials and Pelote Mining, and any city conversations between Matsu and the city of Southport. So my last closing statement is your documentation reflects that documentation should be delivered within 5 to 10 days. Well, day 19, I get something. Seriously? Right? But that said, I understand how complex everything is. I understand how busy everybody is. But a special thank you. Noah, thank you. And Penny and Tori, thank you very much for following up with that documentation. So I'm not going to apologize for my passion, but I would like to understand how the process works. Everything that I stated and any feedback that I get, there has to be a wider dissemination of that information. Otherwise, these 40 plus people have no idea what the answer was, nor does anybody calling in via the webcast. I appreciate your time.
Madam Clerk.
Bonnie Bray.
Good morning, Bonnie Bray, 515 Quartermaster Drive in Southport. I'm here to ask some questions, hopefully get answers with Mosley's presentation. I want to thank Alderman Mosteller for pressing the point during the February meeting that we need to see Mosley Architects here in person, as opposed to getting a summary of Mosley's work from staff, especially considering Mosley already did a report on what the police department space needs are back in September 2023. So what we have, so in addition to my questions, I'll put out a little bit of history. In September 2023, Mosley Architects determined that by 2043, which is not that far away, the city police would have 31 staff members, and would also, and those to house those officers and other staff members, it would require 8,500 square feet. Now we have the report that was given by staff back in February, which says that the old city hall, the information looked at the old city hall and where the police department should go and how they would go fit in there. And Mosley determined, according to the staff report, that it would take the room available for city staff or for police officers would be only 6,700 square feet available once the building was renovated, the old courthouse. I think I'm not making a lot of sense here. So I have some issues. I have questions about how we can go from fitting, and we didn't see one of the things, the questions with Mosley today, I think, is going to be how how they derived their staff numbers. How many officers, how many staff members are there going to be in 15 years, in 20 years? The other questions I have are about cost. Back in December 2023, just a little bit after the Mosley report was delivered, city paid for a study by High Caps just to take a look at all the city buildings and including the old courthouse to determine what repairs were needed, what kind of shape the buildings were in, not what they could be used for, but what their current, at that time, current state of repair was. The old courthouse was by far the biggest offender. According to High Caps, back in December 2023, so that was a year and a half ago almost at this point, it would require $3.9 million for immediate repairs, not renovating, not doing anything other than fixing the things that were currently unacceptable as far as the building code, et cetera, goes. They included things like drainage system and erosion control, paving and curbing, foundation, facades, electrical, plumbing, life safety, and fire protection. And we all know that the mold remediation has already been taken care of and the HVAC work has already begun. But there are all these other things that don't have anything to do with a police department renovating a building such this historic building and turning it into a police headquarters. So that was 3.9 million. Then there was in a year later, December 2024, just a couple of months ago, there was another study done that determined that you all got this information, determined that the renovating the courthouse building would take $4.2 million, not 3.9. So it's already gone up. And that didn't even have, at that point, that estimate did not even include putting the public meeting space back upstairs, having the building open to the public again, and have a place for you all to have your permanent meeting space, not to mention the planning board and the board of aldermen. So there's a lot of balls in the air here. So now, last month, we have the new information from Mosley, which is, according to that information, now the cost to renovate the building is down to 3.6 million. So we go 3.9 in December 2023, 4.2 in December a couple of months ago, and 3.6 now. So I can't understand how it was even possible to think about not having Mosley here at the meeting in February. I understand that they couldn't make it because it got canceled and then rescheduled, and they already had a commitment. But the information that's out there currently conflicts itself. I don't know how in the world we can take, have the 31 officers at that point in September 2023. It was determined that staff would be at 31 people. That didn't even account for the 6 officers that have already been determined as will be needed when Indigo gets built out. Not to mention all of and here we are a year and a half later, and all the September 2023 report didn't account for all the Brunswick County development that affects our first responders, didn't even account for all the county development that has happened since then. So we need Mosley here. I'm really glad they are here. I'll be very curious to find out if these questions get answered. How do you go from needing 8,500 square feet to put that in a building that's going to net 6,700 square feet? So I hope y'all ask a lot of questions. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
That was all.
Move to go out of public comment.
Second. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Move to go out of public comment.
Is there a second to that motion? There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? We're at public comment. Well, let's have a short recap of what actually happened last meeting. There was a postponement of continuing the contract for the 441 acres, plus or minus the acreage that we're going to have, to research what two other jurisdictions are doing. The decision has to be made before the end of March, because that's when the contract expires. So the only meeting between now and then that we have scheduled is March 13th. So I suggest that you come on March 13th. This is not a panic moment. This is actually a fiduciary thing. And that we should see what happens, see what the conversation is on March 13th. And this board will make a decision at that time to either extend the contract or do something else, but it's not like it's going to be forever. So I encourage you all to show up on the 13th. Robert, am I correct? Okay. So the next topic is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any conversation? Not hearing any. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. The first topic is the brick. Tom Z, you are up, sir.
Good morning. Just here to give an update on the brick grant because things have been happening very quickly in the past couple of weeks. First off, this is the grant that we submitted a letter of interest on back in October of this year for the Bonnets Creek Storm System Phase 1 improvements. That's the project that includes the storm sewer that goes under the hospital emergency room and through the rear yards of Fodale Ave. So it was kind of a high priority to get that fixed. We don't need to be flooding the hospital out at any point in time. The estimated cost on it is $3.9 million, and it called for a $1.2 million city contribution. On February 10th, I received an email from the North Carolina Emergency Management Hazard Mitigation Division, and that invited us to actually submit a formal grant for that. So our letter of intent was selected to go forward in the application process. And they said we'll receive further information on how to apply by the end of April. However, there was one issue, and that's we need to have a fully engineered set of plans by the October 31st grant deadline. They won't accept any application unless it includes a fully engineered set of plans. On February 18th, received another email from them giving more information about the brick grant and the submittal, and it included two major points. First, the funding is a disaster-based mitigation allocation, and the local match is going to be paid for by the state. So the $1.2 million is off the table for the city having to contribute. They're only submitting shovel-ready applications, which they said in the first one, meaning we have to get it under design. To do the design, we'll need about $500,000 or $600,000 to get that going, and we need that started yesterday if we want to apply, because it's going to take a good 6 months to get everything engineered and lined up in place. And all this, once again, is by October 31st deadline. They also stated that the grant is no longer a competition, but it's actually an allocation. So for being invited, they've already pretty much set aside money. Nothing is ever 100%, but they're pretty much saying that they only received about 151 projects in the LOI, and that totaled just over 600 million. And the Fed share for this is 1.5 million. So right now with the applications, with the LOIs that were submitted, there were much more money than applications.
I'm sorry, sir. 1.5 million or billion?
1.5 billion, sorry, billion. 800 million were submitted, 1.5 billion is what they have. So if the city wishes to go forward. The downside is we need to come up with 500,000 or 600,000 in the next couple of weeks to get a design contract on board.
Is there any questions from the board for Tom Z?
Oh, is that, do you know if this 500,000 or 600,000 is reimbursable once?
I
The
don't
project.
have that answer yet. I've sent an email to the grant administrator to ask that question. I don't know. I haven't heard back from him on it.
Noah, do we have an idea of where the money's coming from?
So that would come out of fund balance. So, per the audit, we have a very robust fund balance. So it will be a good size investment. But, if we're getting back essentially 8 times that investment with the state money, I think it's very well worth the expense.
And what would be the correct procedure to make that budget
So
modification?
if you just, if the consensus is to move forward today, then finance staff will craft the budget amendment. We can bring that to your 13th meeting and move forward with it.
Tom, do you need it before the 13th?
No, if I know the budget amendment is coming through, I could start getting the proposal together from the consultant to have everything, get going. And then we'll look to award a contract to them at the April meeting.
Alderman Spencer?
Is the engineering for just that section? When you say the complete engineering, is it just for the?
Just for what we submitted to the grant, yes.
Okay, so no plans for the hydroelectric dam at Bonnett's Creek? Or the bridge? I'm joking. Or is there any room for the bridge?
No.
Because
That was not part of the LOI that was submitted. At first, when the LOI was submitted with the city set aside, I didn't want to go with a much larger project. The entire Bonnett's Creek improvement is about 10 to 12 million. I just took one small piece out, like I said, because there was the 30% set aside. And at that point, they didn't say we were going to get a state.
it just, when you help the flow at Fodale, you're going to increase the
Yeah.
flooding
Yes,
that's held back from Bonnett's Creek.
yes.
I'm,
I'll rephrase it.
You put more water in up here, you get more water down here.
okay.
Flows faster, more efficient, right?
The design still has to be done, and there are some concepts that we're going to be looking at that would actually slow down the water coming through.
So you disbursement, what about the location of these drains? Are they going to be behind the houses or in front of the houses?
All this is going to be designed. We're going to look at if we can move the system into the street, or do we keep it in the backyard and just put it underground? That's all part of the design process.
And the big, again, you got to get under Leonard. Will it go to that extent? You understand what I'm saying? It goes
Yes.
behind those houses, it turns, and
Yes,
it goes
it
underground.
does go under Leonard. Yes.
In a zigzag motion of old piping.
That's scheduled to be replaced. This goes under Leonard, down Herring, and includes Willis. The picture should be in your packet of it.
Tom?
Yes.
I don't know much about engineering. To be accurate, I don't know anything about engineering. But am I correct in what?
But you have God.
We all do. Was it necessary to start here before moving further on? Was this the first piece of a jigsaw puzzle that needed to be
Generally,
taken care of?
you would start at the river and work in. The reason this was chosen is because it goes under the hospital. That got us more points in any application we would have put through. We have a storm system that runs under a hospital. that if something were to happen to it, we have no way of getting at it. So that, no, you generally don't want to start upstream. In this case, there was a reason we chose to.
Alderman Kelly.
So assuming we're in consensus to move forward with this, knowing that there is $1.5 billion and only $800 million earmarked for this at this point, is there anything else that we can go back to them and say, hey, let's add this to it?
Once we get this going, that's going to be my next question to them. Can we put another application in, or can we take this, what we already put in, and blow it out into something larger?
Thank you.
But I don't want to get down that road and have red flags go up on our application.
I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure we were thinking in that direction.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Alderman Carroll.
yes, I agree with Alderman Kelly. A modification to our application or something, if we can, would be amazing. I think we need a better understanding of how much money we've already dedicated to some of our ideas and thoughts and projects before we keep eating away at our general fund. We have a lot of pie in the sky ideas about what we need to fix and what we want to buy and how we want to do things. And I would like to have a better, I mean, it's one thing to call it robust. It's another to see how we've already in our minds allocated some of this general fund. So
Surprisingly enough, Alderman Carroll, the manager and I had that same conversation, that when we come back on the 13th, there'll be a document there, because we all need to have that concept. Any other questions? I have to say
Do you
that
need a motion? Do you need, I'm sorry.
well, the only other thing, if I might, is that was not me saying I don't want to do this project. That was just, we need to go back to our board, drawing board, and determine where our priorities lie. This is a priority for all of us, I believe.
so. I'm going to ask the manager, your question is, and because I realized that when I was looking at this document a couple of days ago, that there was no motion. So to go forward, ensure that you've got the consensus to go forward, how do you suggest that we proceed at this point?
So I'm good right now with the general direction to move forward, and then I've asked finance staff to give us an up-to-date fund balance idea. You know, as you said, we have many projects going on the budget coming forward that we'll have to look at the fund balance too. So we're going to get you that, what we have and what we spent it on so far, and we'll have that on the 13th.
Are you good?
Well, that means on the 13th, we'll have a motion for this.
That's right. You'll just have to approve the budget amendment.
Okay.
Any other comment? I just want to say that for the couple of meetings that I happened to sit in on with the Tom and Tom team, it was quite enjoyable. It was quite enjoyable watching us tackle them, not us. I was a spectator. Watching them tackle this issue, while looking back at what I still can't understand why it's called a potential tropical storm, because it was no potential. It hit us. That's what it's called. And the piece of legislation that was attached to the bigger bill of Senate Bill 382, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which was an omnibus bill of a whole bunch of things. But it did say in there that they would pay for the deductible, for lack of a better term. And the team followed up on that and got us $4 million for $500,000, our investment. And hopefully they'll be able to expand it beyond that, but we'll see how that works out. So if there's no other questions from Tom Z. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tom. You make engineering simple.
You have to kiss it.
All right. So I guess you don't get to sit down. The next one is Old City Hall.
Okay. Mosley Architects has a representative here today. I just want to go over a couple things very quickly. Mosley was unable to attend the last meeting. They were ready for the Thursday night. When it was moved to a Monday, they had a previous engagement and could not make it, but we kept it on the agenda anyway. That's number one. Number two, their contract with the city is pretty much all wrapped up. They are actually working on overtime right now with the things they do. They're pretty much going beyond their actual contract. So I just want to let everyone know that up front. And with that, I will introduce Josh Bennett from Mosley Architects.
Thanks, Tom. Mr. Mayor, Alderman, Mr. Manager, thank you very much for having me today. Again, accept my apologies for not being at the last meeting, but I am here and happy to answer any questions you all may have about your old city hall and the potential renovation for the police station. Would you like me to give a brief overview, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, would you, sir?
Okay, so we attended a meeting just before the snowstorm with the chief and Tom, where we walked through the existing building. It was our first time to actually access the facility after it had been remediated of mold. And at that time, we were able to ascertain a little better idea of the actual condition of the facility. After that, we went back and we examined the existing floor plans, and with the knowledge that we had of the existing facility, laid out what we'll call a blocking diagram. I know it looks a lot more specific than a blocking diagram, but we had the opportunity, and it didn't take much longer to go ahead and investigate it a little more deeply. The plan that we presented simply shows how we could reuse the building. I believe, to the resident's point earlier, this facility is smaller than what was originally programmed, and it is. It doesn't contain things like an exercise room or a sally port, but it does meet the other functions, the other critical functions that were represented in the program as they pertain to the actual staff positions. So what you see in the floor plan is a secure lobby, a chief's office, installation of a new elevator, provision of a meeting room on the second floor for 100 people, secure entry and exit at the rear of the building for police officers and aldermen, as well as additional meeting spaces, secure evidence storage, and report writing areas. So.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have some questions.
I know that you do.
Thank you so much for being here.
Love to be.
So I appreciate everything. I'm having difficulty understanding the math. And so when we start off looking at the space square footage numbers on page 4, do you have your original plan you gave us in 2023? Is that part of this? Yeah, that'd be great. If you can go to page 4. Anyway, and I can just tell you because I got it in front of me.
Yep, now I just looked at the numbers. They're fresh in my mind.
So good. So it says, and I think the numbers you're working with are the 2043, that last number, that 8658.
That was the net square footage. Then there was a grossing factor that was applied to that got it just over 10,000, right?
Right.
Same page.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. So when we talk about net square footage, I just want to be clear that I think what it is. Net square footage would be the functional space inside. The net would be what you actually are utilizing.
Yes, the net is your usable square footage.
Your usable square footage.
Yes,
right. And it gross square footage would be the measurements from the exterior around.
Yes, that includes all your wall thicknesses, corridors, mechanical spaces, elevator shafts, stairwells, that kind of thing.
Okay. And so then when I go to your 2-story concept, you make a reference that basically you need to add to that 8,600, you need to add 1,400 because you've got stairs and elevator.
Correct.
So we're in a 2-story program.
Right.
So it would seem to me then that net square footage, if we were looking at your original plan, would need to be 10,000 square feet is the net square footage that you've got in that plan.
It would be if we were translating one for one.
Right.
Now, if I may, I'd like to qualify the number. So when we were tasked with, say, how can we reuse this building? We looked at how can we reduce or maximize the efficiency of what the chief asked for, right? So what the chief and I looked at and agreed to, and we said, here's what we need going forward. Here's the ideal scenario of what we're going to create. Okay. Now, how can we get those same people into this facility? Well, chief, we've got to take some people out of an office and put them into a workstation. sergeants may have to share an office, whereas originally we had planned on them not sharing an office. And I know we can go back and say, well, Josh, why didn't you just program them to share in the office to begin with? I get it. This was more an exercise of how can we be functional in this facility. So we reduced things by striking them at first, including the sally port, the exercise room, things like that. Then we further reduced square footages where we took people out of offices or we combined functions into spaces to where they would be used doubly. Does that mean that it is non-functional? Absolutely not. Does it mean that it's going to get us further down the road with less square footage? Absolutely. And then one other question that you may be percolating on is, how did we reduce our grossing factor so significantly to be able to fit into the building? If you look at this new plan in the old courthouse, there is such little circulation space because we have doubled up on a lot of it. That main central corridor that runs down the middle on the first floor, we're using that as report writing and some locker space and other things. So we've been able to really maximize the efficiency of the existing building to take up a lot of that. That was a lot. Did I make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So originally you met with when you gave us the original report in 23,
Yes, ma'am.
you had met with the department heads and the chief and the major and
Yes.
and gone through what they thought they needed.
Yes.
Now you've met again with them and now they need less. That's what's making this possible.
Yes, they've made some concessions. I would say it that way. So they've said we can get by with this. We can make this work for that function. Right.
So, okay. So then the numbers, that's really what I'm having trouble with. You've got here,
Mhm.
You're saying that in 44, you need 8,600 square feet. This is for, and then you reduce that to 7,800. Right. It says once you take the sally port out.
Take the sally port out, that takes it down to 7,800. And then we further reduced it. We don't have the exercise room. We don't have dedicated locker rooms anymore.
Right.
We've reduced the number of interview rooms.
Right.
So we've made some additional concessions.
So I think part of my problem is just the layout. When you're looking,
Sure.
I'm trying to comprehend the layout, which, hang on one second. Sorry. There we
Got
go.
that back up on the screen.
Here it is. I got it here. In this, so can you tell me, like looking at the first floor?
The first floor.
The vestibule. You've got the vestibule. That's at the other end? The vestibule's at the other end. Can you tell me what's the purpose of that?
So as you come in the first floor there, you would have a space as you enter the building to secure things like gun cleaning and the workroom. So it's an airlock essentially as you're coming into the building.
And when you mean airlock, there'd be a door there though.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So there are just things like, okay, come in the vestibule, you walk by the lockers and in the workroom, and then you go to an interview room.
Correct.
I'm assuming that an interview room is either a citizen or a criminal. I don't, who goes in an interview room?
Yes.
Yes. So we're walking them by the lockers and the workroom to get to the interview room.
Correct.
Okay. And then on the gun cleaning side, we're walking through the gun cleaning and then into a shared office and then into the sergeant's office. And we've got the bag and tag. When you did the design on the original 2023, the bag and tag space was an isolated space.
Yes.
Connected to the vault.
Yes.
And so, but in this alliteration, there's all these things around the bag and tag.
Right.
Does that, I don't know about designing a police station. That's not my forte, but it's very different than how you did bag and tag. I would have assumed that would be something you would want secure and more secure than that.
This is a great question. Thank you. Because this goes to the crux of what's making it work right now. doing bag and tag in an open area like this is generally acceptable because it is in a secure part of the building. So this area is not accessible by the public. And because of the vestibule, it's only accessible by people who are badged into that area, which given the functions on this side of the hallway would be credentialed officers. All right. So at that point, anybody entering that area is theoretically able to view and see evidence as it's out. Now that evidence is simply processed, placed in a bag. If it's most of the time it comes in a bag already. They simply process it, log it, put it in a locker, and it goes through. So it's a very expedient transaction there. Having the gun cleaning right behind it, while maybe not ideal, is not uncommon. In fact, a lot of departments have I say a lot, I shouldn't qualify it. Departments do have their gun cleaning out in open areas. Sometimes that is desirable because you want to see your officers cleaning their gun. It is because if you don't, they won't. So you're kind of shaming them a little bit and cleaning their guns so you can see them. What we need to overcome then, of course, are the fumes and the smells and things like that. We'll overcome that with exhaust. So we would have localized exhaust at that gun cleaning station to make it work. So whereas we had 3 spaces to begin with, a bag and tag, a gun cleaning, and a corridor, we've now been able to consolidate all 3 of those into essentially 1 space. The other thing I'll say about this plan, it's not cooked, right? This is simply proof of, this is how, if we wanted to do this, this is how it could work. This is what we might have to do. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Great. Chief, did you want to talk about the interview, or are we good? Did we cover that okay? We understand people going to.
I mean, some of these titles are not, they're titled one way, but I mean, this is yes, sir. So this is a living, breathing document, as we hear a lot. And so as he's saying, we went back and forth a lot on these designs. Some of these titles will be changed once we determine if we're even going in the building. So, but it does flow well. We've looked at it. As I mentioned earlier, we sacrificed a lot to go in the building, but it does not affect our operational needs in the future. So, but yeah.
May I ask a question? Your original design was a want to have, like to have. And from an industrial engineering perspective, you kind of brought it down to what we absolutely have to have.
We have, yes, sir.
Yes, I have to have.
Yeah.
And that's always fluid. Things change. Operations change.
Yeah.
So even when you come down to what was almost a final thing, that's going to change as well because the needs change as well.
Right. And two, if I might add, and so I kind of have a unique perspective on this, being here as long as I have and knowing, to start with, the idea of the police department going in that building should not be a surprise to many. We started talking about this way back in 2015. I looked at several studies since we've actually looked at the possibility of actually going in that building. And so I pulled back the November 9th, 2010 space needs that the city did. And it was then determined that the police department needed a 4,000 square foot facility. They gave 2 options on how to do that back in 2010. I'm just giving a little history. I know this doesn't affect any of you. You weren't seated at the time, but I've done my due diligence just looking at, because I'm excited about the possibility that we could have a new building. So I wanted to do my research. And so in 2010, they needed 4,000 square foot of new facility, and they opted to, one option was to build a standalone building where Public Works is now in that parking area. They were going to build a 4,000 square foot building there at 680,000, and that would have met the needs then. The second option was to upfit the existing fire department that was still standing where they had built the new one, and that was about a 216,000 upfit to that building to put us in and add to make a 4,000 square foot facility there. Still looking at the layout and the number of officers and moving them along as the demand increases our personnel. Then in September 9 of 2013, Keller Construction had then done a design for the police department to go in the city hall as it sits now. Chief Dove was the chief at the time. And so I've looked at that blueprint. I've got it in here. I was able to pull and review that. I also reviewed again the 2010. And then also October 11 in 2015, there was a design done by Cape Fear Architects, then under Chief Smith. So again, the same design was looked at, still meets that. The only thing we've done now new is, as we have grown, is utilizing the entire building. So we have, again, sacrificed some things. The very first design we brought back to y'all early on was a state of the art. Hey, we've got 14 or 16 million dollars. Let's build a new standalone building. And there were some renderings of what it would look like. And some of y'all right away was like, that doesn't look like a Southport building. And there's a lot of space in here. Why do you need a workout room? Why do you need a sally port and all that? So as discussions have continued, we're trying to modify and sacrifice and pull back things. I've talked to other departments that have recently built new police departments, and they put a sally port. And the reality is they don't really need it. Now you walk in that sally port, it's a storage room. We don't have a high crime volume here in Southport, thank goodness. I'm very proud of that. So the need for us to bring in and evidentiary things inside an enclosed sally port is very low on what I would consider our needs now. Again, a wellness room, workout room, we didn't need that big area. That was some other space we could sacrifice. We can utilize a gym here. I've talked to some gym memberships here, and they said, hey, we'll give y'all a good, a good price to come in here, and we'll work out there. I've talked with Chief Drew at the fire department. They have a gym in there. We could go in there and utilize their gym. So we've done our research there. Again, a locker room, showers. We need those things, but we've modified it to fit in the building as it sits now. So I feel like we can utilize all the space. As he was saying, some of the larger areas, we've kind of broke those down and can fit some of these needs in there. And the flow of these rooms, again, Alderman Mossell, they do look kind of silly right now. I even looked at them and have changed them since. But a gun cleaning room, there wouldn't be a gun cleaning room. It's an evidentiary room and processing and things like that. And the flow of that works with our operations. So again, upstairs, I think we can utilize space there as well. So there's some modifications there, but I think it'll carry us into the future. And I've heard all these different people, and you see all the news feeds on all our social media and about they went and sat at these places. I know Ms. Bray, you came to me back in February, this earlier, and we had a long discussion, went over this plan in detail. And I even told her and showed her what I've got in this folder, all these different drawings. People think that, oh, well, that's a beautiful historic building, and if a police department goes in there, it's going to have bulletproof glass and nobody can go in there and look at it. But even if we go in there or City Hall personnel go in there, it's still not a museum where you can just freely walk in there and just look at the building and the walls and all that. So there's just all kind of stuff going around. So I say all that to say we've looked at this. I think we can function in here. It will carry us into the years. These numbers about we need 10 people next year and 5 and all that, that's not how we operate as far as our numbers. I was hit with some citizens recently. They went to a meeting about Indigo or Waters, and they gave a presentation and said that we would need anywhere from 4 to 6 officers. But that's years down the road. We look at our call volume and our functionality of what we have. So we're in a good place right now. So
you're going back to, again, I think you just said, we've taken a look at what we wanted to have and you're bringing it down to what we have to have.
Yes, sir. And there was a public outcry then, I may add, when we left. When I was hired in 2018, I was faced with a lot of things. And one of the things we were faced with, they had an independent investigative unit come in and then, look at the police department and everything that we had in front of us, to include the FBI, SBI, and this agency out of Charlotte. And 3 of the critical things one was space needs and functionality and things of that nature. So we had to relocate from the Indian Trail, which was supposed to have been temporary anyway. In 2016, when I was on the board, the manager relocated the PD there temporarily. But again, things changed. It's no fault of anybody in here. A lot of things changed then. But we relocated to the upstairs of the City Hall building. And there we were just under about 1,000 square feet on the second floor, part of the second floor. The years I spent there, about 5 before we moved to where we are now, I modified and rebuilt and upfitted 6 times in there to include closing in larger spaces to make different offices. We secured a lobby. We had to build as best a state-of-the-art type of evidence vault that we could on the second floor. And then we still continue to need more space. So I talked to different managers at the time, needing the admin space where they were. And it's hard to go and ask your city manager, I need this office space. But we talked about it. And one of them told me, don't bring me problems without solutions. How do you think we can fix this? So I started talking to the staff downstairs, and the Indian Trail building was down there, and we all talked, and they said, hey, planning and developmental services, we could put all that staff in the Indian Trail meeting hall. They could function in there, and we could then put admin off the second floor on the bottom floor, and that would open up space for us, and we could have stayed there. But I was told, that was shut down. They said the Indian Trail had been recently remodified and it needed to be space for public to have meetings and that kind of thing. So I feel like I've done my due diligence. That's why I'm trying to put this pitch out there to let you know I've really looked at all different kinds of avenues. We could have stayed there had we not had to go where we are now. And even when Manager Therian was there, that is a good temporary location for us, but it cannot be permanent. It really can't. There's different things going on there. So
I have a question for Mosley. What we're talking about here is pretty common, is it not? From you're using your word, the ideal to the reality.
Yes, sir.
Having lived through this, and I saw the ideal for the department I came from, which was 500 people, it was spectacular. The reality was a lot smaller. Sergeants can share rooms. They're not all together at the same time. They can actually have cubicles. You can do that. Depends on your department and how you do that. But none of it diminishes the capability of the department to do their job. As long as the engineers and the police chief and the manager all get together and input from the board of aldermen, and we put our heads together. Obviously, we want our police department to function professionally as they do, and to keep that. And they're going to have more room. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. They'll have more room in this building than they currently have. And somehow things get done that way. So I'll end that question to you and just make a statement. The question that's before us right now is not whether or not the staircase goes to the left or the right, or this room is that or that. The question that's before us right now is so that we can apply for grants, whether they are grants that are earmarks or grants that are grants from other organizations because of the historic nature of the building, is what are we going to put in that building? And the final design, as long as we have Mosley and the chief and the manager and the engineers, other engineers saying that it could, if you wanted to go in this direction, it would work. Then the only question before us is we have to make a decision as to what's going to go in that building. After that, the exact configuration of, and certainly tell me, push back on me if I'm wrong. After that, the exact configuration of which room and door somebody walks into to get to someplace else can be worked on, because the legislative session is now afoot. And the mayor pro tem and I represented this board in Raleigh last week and made the pitch. So my understanding, give or take something, about $5 million for the whole thing. That's where we are. So that might answer some of the questions. It's about $5 million. And that's the pitch line that we use. $5 million is going to cost approximately $5 million to do this whole thing and do it correctly. And we were making a pitch, obviously, to the state to give us some money. Didn't get that commitment because no one until mid-April knows how much money there's going to be in the state program. That's when the House and the Senate decide how much they're going to spend. And they know that because of the revenue estimate they're going to get. And after that, then all the legislators understand how much money they might be able to give to their respective districts. That's just how it works. But we have to make that decision if we hope to get in on a possibility of that thing. Even absent that, we can't guarantee that. We can't move forward with all of the grants, as I understand it. Tom Z, am I speaking correctly? We cannot move forward on the grants until we just say to the grantor exactly what we plan to do, not as in the room size, but what we plan to do overall at the global side. So that's the question that's before us. Alderman Carroll.
Thank you.
Whoa.
He said.
Alderman
What do you
Davis,
mean?
hold on.
Are you?
Alderman Carroll, go.
Is he saying we should decide the use or not?
Yes. He is saying we should decide the use.
Today? I thought you
But
were
the question
saying.
at hand is we need to decide the use. But
I-
let me,
Go ahead.
is that correct? That
I'm
was the
sorry,
question.
sir.
The question is, should we decide the use? And the answer is yes.
Well,
It's we
that's,
have to in order to apply for.
that's a
grant.
board decision, whether we
Right.
do that today.
Well, it's not whether we do it today or tomorrow or the 13th or that's the question.
That's the
what we have
question
to
that's
decide.
before us. The
So-
board could choose to do it today if the board so chooses to do that. But one way or the other, someday in either today or someone in the near future, this program that has been going on for almost 9 years of inaction has to come to some kind of conclusion. We need to move forward.
Thank you all.
Can we have a special called meeting just to discuss this?
Alderman Davis, could you please just stop for a second? Alderman Carroll has the floor.
Okay. So, no, I did not. I didn't even start. I was trying to clarify your question. Just helping a fellow board member out, you know?
Thank you so much.
So, a couple of things. I have a long history with this building. I am dedicated to this building being renovated and maintained in some way. And I want it to be the very best that it can be. Couple of things. You understand functional obsolescence. That's like architecture 101. You would agree that this plan has significant functional obsolescence within it, correct? As it sits today.
As it sits today, yes, sir.
Okay.
Life changes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I would note to the rest of the board, the chamber, as they've now drawn it, only has 100 people. I agree that we, need to pass it to figure out what's in it. So we need to make the decision so that we can, and again, I'm committed to making sure it's the very best. I think one of the challenges that we're facing right now is that it has been years of consideration about what to do. And now we're sitting here with a half-baked plan that isn't really informing us on how best to move forward. If we go to this page again, y'all, I think everybody on this board would consider Mosley architects the experts at this. This is why we hired you. And you came up with a plan that would require members of the public to leave and actually walk behind the chamber in order to access a toilet in spaces that probably should be secured, I would assume. So it's just small stuff like this that, you admitted, isn't ready to come out of the oven. But here we are trying to make an informed decision about how this could actually function. And there's nothing about this that actually seems to function from a real estate perspective. And four of us having a license understand there's two things: location and functional obsolescence. And this it just has a ton of it.
Well, I take exception to the fact that you'd have to go behind secure perimeter to go to a toilet, as there is a toilet on the first floor and an elevator available. The building code does permit you to travel one floor vertically up or down in order to access said toilet. So there are public facilities available. As we've said, the plan is not cooked. It is not done. This is simply a proof that you could do something. Whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing is up for discussion. And honestly, I have no ties to the plan whatsoever, as we have not vetted it with you and the other members of the community. So there have been discussions when we first laid out the plan that maybe the interview room on the public side on the second floor become a toilet, or have a toilet in it, or have a toilet available. So things like that are questions that we would have to vet out that, as you said, with our expertise, we would bring to the table as we make critical decisions, because we can't do everything in this building that we want to do.
And I apologize if I offended you. I understand you were asked to put a square peg in a round hole here. You would agree that this is not a great plan.
This plan was not drawn to be a great plan. This plan was drawn to be a plan that shows here's how much square footage, the types and number of spaces we can get. This plan is not here for approval to build today.
I had circling back to the numbers again. I just want to make sure because the note says City Hall has approximately 8,500 square feet, and that includes approximately 1,800 square feet of courtroom. That's a note from your sort of analysis of the space needs, leaving 6,700 of office space. I just want to make sure that you're aware that the 8,500 square foot number is the exterior number. You're mixing the net square footage of 1,800 from the courtroom. That's what's left because you're going to take 25%. So a way to look at that practically is this room is the same size as the courtroom. This room we're in is 2,400. So imagine taking 25% of this room away. That gives you an idea of what that is going to be. So, and,
Yes, you're right. We are mixing the net and the gross in that
Yeah.
we have an 1,800 square foot net room, and then we're deducting that from an 8,500 square foot ish gross number.
Right.
But the 1,800 square feet of that room is the square footage of that room.
right. No, I get you. I got you. But that is essentially right now the courtroom is 2,400. That's what I've been told, right? So we're essentially reducing the existing space, the courtroom, by 25%.
Right. From what it is today.
Right.
Which is the size of this space is what she's referring to.
Well, what I was saying is it's less. I was told when you go on the website that this is 2,400 square feet.
We looked at this not in terms of square footage. We looked at this in terms of the actual seating capacity.
Okay.
So, for instance, we could triple the number of seats in this room right now.
Yeah.
We could reduce it by half and put in a bunch of banquet tables. It just depends on how we lay it out and draw it up and what we want to do. Tom's got
Well, right here, you've got 100 people with chairs.
Right. Let me just clarify a couple of things upstairs. Current seating capacity of the courtroom in that building is 98 people. This proposal is for 100. Right now in that building, there's a dais elevated platform that's about 30 feet wide. The reduction in the size of it is 10 feet. It's making the dais from 30 feet down to 20 feet. The 30 feet that's up there is more for when it was a courtroom. It's not a courtroom. The space that you're using right now is probably about 10 feet. So the dais that's going to be in there is probably double the space that you're using right now. The depth of it, yes. So the seating capacity of that room is not changing. What's changing is the dais length. Because it was set up as a courtroom, you had, like the barrister and that whole kind of setup. I mean, if anybody wants to go through that building, let me know. We'll get you through the building to see what's in there. I think it would be very eye-opening and would end a lot of the discussion that we're having right now.
Can I add something real quick? I'm not an architect or engineer, but the movement of that wall was done, as a couple of y'all mentioned about the functionality and the flow back there, because there was very little movement back there. So that's why that was decided to move up, because you wouldn't lose, space there. And as far as the drawing, when he was hired originally, I think you've already said that as well. When Manager Therian was here, I had asked him to kind of modify this. He kind of probably did it, won't say it, probably as a favor to me, just to try to give you guys a concept to show you that it will fit in here, but it is not nailed down, as he was saying. So we would, if y'all did say, hey, let's move forward with the police department, you would see some things change, and that would clean up a lot. And those thicker walls, obviously, as you can tell, those are the walls that are the historical walls, and we didn't know what we could move and that kind of thing. So that's why I think, Alderman Carroll, it does kind of look sloppy, if you will. That's kind of what I'm thinking that you're seeing as well, but just a little history on that. So
what I don't want to happen is there are few of us that will still be here in 2044. and well, I didn't include you.
Perhaps, Robert.
Maybe. So a few of us will still be here. I don't want to be having the same conversation in 20 years or 18 years about what to do with this building because we've built it obsolete.
Well,
that's my fear.
One other point, Mosley's contract was not to do an architectural design. It was to do a block diagram. This is basically a block diagram. It takes the space that's there and puts a block in. It doesn't mean that's what it's going to be. It's just showing that this is how much space is needed. Now it will need to be fine-tuned and everything moving forward. So please don't look at this and think this is an architectural drawing, because that is not the intent. That was not in their contract. Their contract was for a block diagram drawing, which is totally different. So.
Which I appreciate, and I get all of that. I think the interactions, we're taking the most secure space in the city departments and merging it with the most public space of our meetings. And those interactions are interesting, given that you've got offices emptying into the chamber, the door to an office. Now, y'all can move them all around, but that's a police function, and there's not enough hallways because of this is an old building, and that's why adaptive reuse is for these buildings. And so I think there's these interactions. We happen to have 2 break rooms because you need a break room upstairs with the chamber as well as one downstairs. So we're increasing the needing another function. So some of these trade-offs also are taking up more square footage for these interactions between the most secure and the most public. And so I'm struggling to think, just things like an elevator, a commercial size elevator, because of our demographics. I mean, let's be real about our demographics in our community and how many of our citizens are going to be wanting to use that elevator, and they're all coming to the same thing at the same time. And then to have, we won't have access to multiple stalled bathrooms for the public space, which is something you might expect to find it for a public space. So we're talking 20 years out. And there's no IT room. Now, the only storage is designated as upstairs. So there's no file, and we've taken an administration. I appreciate that the police, the argument of whether 31 officers will be, or what the personnel will be for that space is a moving target. But we have an analysis that we paid for, done for Indigo Phase 2, that says they'll need 6 police officers. That's analysis by a third party that we paid for, that in 10 years, y'all need that.
But this is what I want you to understand as well. The patrol division is the largest sector of what we do in the police department. Whether it's 8 or 10 officers, the officers are not seated in this building. If you go to the fire station, the EMS and fire personnel, they're seated in that building most of the time, unless they're out training, waiting for the bell to go off. The police officers are not. If you go to our office now, there's 3 or 4 of us in there. The rest of them are out on patrol, and they're not going to be sitting in this. We're not going to need, just because they say 6 officers, we're not going to need 3 more actual physical offices. As the mayor said earlier, right now my sergeants, they hot seat a desk. I don't have 2 sergeants' desk and all that. And so same thing with our accreditation and some of our part-time. We have 1 space that they utilize to best function how we can with what we have. As far as evidence and things like that, upstairs, this interview room is not, I mean, I don't want people to think you're going to come to a board meeting, we've got a homicide victim and they're being interviewed. We wouldn't interview them like that to start with a public meeting going on. And as far as space-wise, a lot of the files and stuff that we have, they're going to be down in our evidence vault. They have to be in a secure area, so we don't need a big room. We certainly, an IT room can be just in the corner of one of these other rooms. But again, I wouldn't look at this and just try to, I don't want people to think I'm just, oh, this is the best we're going to get, I'm going to cram everybody in here and we'll see you later. That's really not at all what I've done with this. Like I said, I've mowed over all of these all the way back from 2010, looking at the needs. I've looked at other PDs and carved some of the fat, because I remember the first time we came in here, some of y'all was like, I don't need a weight room, you need to be out patrol, or so we've modified all that down. There are areas in there, but I can assure you we're looking at those spaces. And the elevator coming from the front lobby up, there are 2 bathrooms there. And yes, as Alderman Carroll said, there's already bathrooms in the back, and they added that. That's just for like if there was a fire and people needed to get out, because the fire exit is to the back. Right now, that's not even available in that building now, but those doors would swing open in the event if there was some kind of emergency to get that building out on both ends. You don't have that now. There's a couple of office doors. So, and there would be hallways, Alderman Moss said, or we wouldn't have like major police functions going on while you guys had meetings going on. We would curtail our activities. That's why the second floor are the lesser busy types of police functions in those offices on the second floor. So just want to let you know, we are, and we'll look at that. So
Just while you're there,
Yes,
as a
sir.
side note, with regards to exercise, do y'all benefit from the same benefits that the rest of the town does with regards to insurance and your gym memberships?
Yeah, some of them. Do.
Okay.
Yeah, we utilize that as well. And like I said, we've got some of the gyms that will let us go in there. And I've talked with Chief Drew. They've got a state of the art gym in there as well. So yeah, we do.
That's what the sheriff's office also does, isn't it? Because I see an awful lot of sheriffs in the job.
They do. And I mean, and it's in the perfect world, we had 20 million bucks and we could build a brand new police department that would be in there, because there are times when I was at the sheriff's office, some of the guys and girls would get off, they'd go in their locker room, they'd shower, they'd change, and they would decompress. They would get on that treadmill, or they'd lift weights, because, some of the things that we deal with every day, even in Little Southport, an example, we had a responder call out here in Southport, and when we got there, the man was actively trying to harm himself, and he ended up terminating his life. The officer was there, both of them covered in blood. We didn't have a shower area. We shared one in the building, but I mean, we do have those needs, and we've had, there's a lot of things that do go on. We did have the fatal hit and run where we had to impound that vehicle and had to call SBI in to help us. So we do have those larger, greater things happen, but just on a smaller scale. But again, I don't take that into consideration, Alderman Carroll. And for the best taxpayer dollar, I don't think we need a big Sally port attached to the back of this building, because again, it's going to collect storage. We'll have Christmas restored in it for the beautification committee probably down the road. But
I have a quick,
I had an engineer look at my house and do all sorts of beautiful redesigns because of all these things that I wanted. And then they came back with what that cost me. And all of a sudden I didn't want it so badly anymore. And I made some changes. And I feel like that's what we're doing here is, yes, we have our pie in the sky hopes and dreams. And when we look at the best way to be fiscally responsible, we go, okay, we have this space. Let's make this the best that it can be for us. And I think that, when we're talking about block design versus actual design out, what it can be, I think that there's a lot of potential for it to work much, much better than what we're seeing in this block design. But until we give you the go ahead, it doesn't make sense for us to spend the money to get that design work done yet.
My turn.
yes, sir, it is.
I sat here patiently, and it is very hard to do for me. So, we've been around a little while, right, Todd? Your dad was the police chief in Southport. What size building your dad work out of, and where was it, Todd?
well, it's actually if you look at the public restroom building, all jokes aside, that is where the police department was. When I grew up here, it was about the same size as the public restroom. It had 2 offices, a half kitchen, and a dispatch area. That was it.
When did we change that, Todd?
That was in 1989 when Dad retired and Chief Robert Gray came in. He was asking then for better facilities and more vehicles. So there was an empty space in Town Hall over here across the street. They relocated them and did the study. So
the police station has been in City Hall before.
yes.
We're just following through. You were moved out because of the mitigation of all the different elements that were becoming hazardous.
Right.
And the plan was to put you back in.
36 years, I think, is how long it's been now that the police department has not had a building.
So
I was looking at the numbers.
So it was a police station, served well there.
Yes.
So we're just following through with a plan that sort of got off course.
Yes, sir.
For as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, sir.
And the size, again, when we used the size of a bathroom 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, it met the needs, I'm sure. Yes.
So the citizens have spoke out a lot to me and want to bring you back downtown. We want to see you on bicycles and foot patrol and serving the citizens of Southport, not out the road.
Yeah.
We've become where our areas is sort of shrunk a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want all my officers out at Walmart, even though it's not the hot spot for us. So this facility over here, well, let me just ask this question. How safe a facility are we in right now?
I mean, it's secure enough behind locked doors, but I mean, it is a shared building. You know, we worry about the ceiling, somebody coming through. It could be
People walking
compromised.
in the door.
Yeah. Oh, you talking about here?
Yeah.
Well, yes, this is what.
Am I protected here from anyone?
That's why I kind of position myself. We are wide open. You guys are. So
Yeah.
yes.
There's no security in this room other than
No.
you.
Right.
No security
Right.
whatsoever. So I see us joining forces. You protect our heritage point.
Yes.
You put the security in this building that we're going to need for public events in the future.
Yes.
Those things, we don't have to get you to come to our events to be there. You'll
Right.
already be downstairs.
Yes, sir.
Just don't put the gun cleaning thing underneath
No.
my seat. Okay.
No.
So I see this as where we're supposed to go back to. The future is not as clear as everybody thinks. It hasn't been as clear as things have been different than what we've seen as we've grown up.
Yes.
So I support you in moving this back in. It's just following through with the plan.
Mhm.
I want to secure City Hall
Yes.
where when citizens come, we're all protected
Right.
and we can speak and talk and discuss.
And we've looked at that too. I thought about that. I mean, we did talk with Cheyenne and as far as all the equipment that would be needed, it can all go in there and it'll also have a dual fold because we can utilize it and say, not having to duplicate that as we're doing now for our police needs for training and so on.
You went to Hee Hall in that building?
We did, yes.
We're going to have a Hee Hall in that building. So it's not going to be a stuffy place. There will be events,
Yes.
Black History events, just like
Sure.
we do here.
And it can still be utilized for that. Again, going up, there's a secure area. And so there is also an executive boardroom that's already there that'll be used and a break room behind that and a bathroom in there for staff or whatever meeting it is that's going on. So yeah.
What are you going to do in the Hee Hall?
What am I going to do?
Here, you'll sing.
I'll be string beans. You can play the banjo there because
Okay, that sounds good. They don't know what we're talking about, but it's good
I
stuff.
did some of them.
All right. I appreciate you. I'm glad you're in the position you're in.
I appreciate that. Thank
Yes, sir.
Alderman Lay.
Bottom line, what we've seen today is a concept that we'd like to have. It would be nice if you could get all that. It's not going to happen. You have to take not all the police officers are going to be in there at the same time. Not all the sergeants are going to be there at the same time. So you're going to have to come in and redesign and make what it's actually going to be. Therefore, I'd like to make a motion to designate the old City Hall courthouse located at 201 East Moore Street for use as the Southport Police Department and Board Chamber. Further, to send to the Planning Board the draft design to review and make a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen on the extent, location, and design of the public structure and facility, and to instruct the Planning Board to report back their recommendations to the Board of Aldermen, their recommendations within 30 days of today, as outlined in Section 13-34 Public Facilities of the Southport Code of Ordinances and Section 2.3 UDO provisions.
Second what he said.
All right, there's a motion on the floor and a second discussion.
Yes. I'm the one who made the motion that we designate use of Old City Hall, Old Courthouse for government use. And I was questioned immediately, why didn't you say for the police department? Because I'm not sold on the fact that this is the best place and the best use of our many government buildings. We own a lot of buildings in Southport, and that this is not necessarily the best government use of this building. Government use, yes, but what are the other possibilities? And that's why I was suggesting that we have a special called meeting to look at potential best uses of what we currently have. For example, we have, excuse me, a cricket is calling. What we have currently in the existing City Hall is an underused building that has a great deal of value now, resale value. We have a functional location for now where the police department is. We have a very underused set of buildings on Fodale, the old, the Indian Trail Meeting Hall is used for public meetings and some board and committee meetings, but they could use those buildings on Fodale. And that could be used for something else, and so on. This is a lot of balls in the air to look at individually as well as a whole before we say this is what Old City Hall will be used for. So can we, instead of passing this motion and committing ourselves to something that does appear to be questionably usable for, first of all, for board purposes, before we commit ourselves and back ourselves into a corner, let's talk about the buildings, all of our buildings as a whole, and figure out the best uses. For example, if we were to sell the current city hall, I believe that that would give us enough money to do an awful lot of the projects that we want to do, as well as beef up our general fund or fund balance.
You're not committing yourself to anything if this vote goes through.
Say what?
You're not committing yourself to anything if this vote goes through.
The
This,
vote
this motion would
is for the
say,
police
would
department.
yes, but it then goes to the planning board to give a recommendation, because that's the way our UDO is written. When it comes back, you'll have the opportunity to listen to whatever recommendation they may have and then decide what we're going to do with the building. So any vote today is not the final say, because the UDO is written in such a way that we are required, though we didn't do it for the sewer project, which almost got us sued, but we were required to go to the planning board. And by the statute, they have 30 days, not because we just arbitrarily picked 30 days to come back. And during that 30 days, the planning board can have as many meetings or no meetings or whatever they want to do. They're just given the 30 days to come back either with a recommendation or no recommendation. And so that is whenever that comes back, you'd have another shot at it.
What will they have to look at to make their recommendation?
They would have access to the entire staff. They'd have access to all the drawings. They'd have access to whatever they wanted to have access to. We wouldn't hide anything from them. They're there to give a review of the concept and come up with their own ideas, collectively their own ideas, as to what they think should happen.
But we already have established that this is just a concept, a blocked out use of space that it. I have my mic on.
You didn't.
Oh,
You
I'm
didn't.
sorry.
But I think that the point is that whatever comes out of the planning board is simply a recommendation, and we tend not to. We tend to make our own decision at the board level. So they're going to see the same thing we saw, and I think the best path forward is that we can only work to make this the very best it can be, given what it's going to be.
Well, if they recommend that we go forward using this as the police station, then, and we accept that, we're locked in to police station. We don't leave ourselves any opportunity to revise this. I always envision the second floor for our use.
That is not accurate, ma'am. They make a recommendation. When it comes back, you consider the recommendation. You can consider everything under the sun during that period of time. You're not locked into it's either this or this. As a legislator, You have wide breadth to decide other things as well. And you have the ability to go to the planning board in public comment and offer your suggestions to them during the next 30 days.
I think the other part of that, Alderman Davis, is we can change our mind after changing our mind. So we can take the recommendation or not take, well, and we can bring back the, street sweeper if you'd like. But that was a joke. Low blow, I'm sorry. So, I say we just vote. We move it on to where it needs to be, get the recommendation, listen to that. But whatever we do as a board, I think we need to work hard to make sure that it's very best. And it may not be what we wanted for it, but let's work together. Let's make it everything it can be, whatever that is.
Well, I have no bias. I have bias for this building and for the suggestions so far. And I want it to be the best that the police department has because I have a kindred spirit for that, just as much as I have a kindred spirit for the fire department as well. But we have to move forward because there's an opportunity to potentially get money out of the state. And we have to have something to go forward to them with. And this has been going on for almost 9 years now. And so it the building sat there without any action on any side of the equation. Last year, this board took action. It has been remediated. The air conditioning goes on today, doesn't it not? Today's the first day you flip the switch to see if it actually works. And the air conditioning system goes in so we don't have it rot again on us. And it's just the natural progression of what we can do. But you are not locked in by a vote today.
Just to be clear, when we ask the state for money for this, we have to tell them exactly how it's going to be used. The fact that it is going to be used for government purposes is not sufficient. We have to tell them what's going to go in there.
I think that in order to apply for the grants, we have to tell them what's going in the building.
I have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
couple other questions. And this would be to Mr. Bennett. And I guess now we don't need the parking spaces that you had in your original plan. You had 34 parking spaces. That was also a pie in the sky conversation. I'm just trying to drill down to what's in that space. Though that parcel of land is only a half acre. So, and most of the building is on the back half and the yard is the front half that fronts more. So from a historical perspective, we would expect that lawn in some form to continue to exist because of, out of respect for it as a landmark.
Karen, you can park in the right of way.
I got you. Don't make me come down there. I'm struggling now with parking, and I appreciate, everybody's riding around, but everybody has to convene at points too. And just as an example, yesterday there were 6 police officer cars behind the police station. So I'm just trying to understand all these variables and how this site is not that.
So if I was planning the ideal scenario, I'd tell you need secure parking. And you're going to need X number of parking based on the size of the building and based on this and that kind of thing. This facility, since you're going into an existing facility, has existing requirements set to it, right? If it was a courthouse, it would require a certain amount of parking. However, that amount of parking is not available, and you can park in the street, and we can park behind the building. Should we have secure parking? I'm going to say yes. I'm always going to say yes. I have a professional responsibility to say yes. Can you do it without secure parking? Yes. The chief has operations and procedures in place that are going to account for those kinds of things. So when we go to an existing facility and we say, how do we make this work? We look at it and we say, well, here's the parking requirement, and we're going to have to modify that and come up with a different way to do it. This is the ideal, and here's what we're going to accept. Lower than that or different than that is probably a better way to say it. If this was an urban police department, which in a lot of ways that's how this is going to function, you would have the same parking challenges.
Can we have Frank read the motion again?
Go ahead, Frank.
Okay. I make a motion to designate the old City Hall courthouse located at 201 East Moore Street for use as a Southport City Department and board chambers. Further, to send to the planning board the draft design to review and make recommendations to the Board of Aldermen on the extent, location, and design of the public structure and facility, and to instruct the public planning board to report back their recommendations to the Board of Aldermen, their recommendations within 30 days of today, as outlined in section 13-34, public facilities of the South Code of Ordinances, and section 2-3 UDO provisions.
And that was seconded. So any more comments?
Just to compare, just so we know, this is basically a $5 million estimated in your packet of information. This renovation is ballparked at 5 million.
I provided a budget.
That's what I mean.
Right. So to the alderman's point earlier, when we renovate our house, we go in and we get the plans and it's perfect and we love it. And then we get the bill and we go, oh my God. Right. So there is going to be that tension between what we want and need and what we can afford as we go through this process. That's why these budget numbers have continued to change as we have developed these things. So when we got the $5 million number, essentially, ma'am, what that is here's what we can buy with it, right?
Right.
And it's just math. We can take money from furniture and put it over here. We can take money from contingency and put it over here. I'm just laying it out so that we're all looking at the same numbers and that we know when we sit down and go, okay, we want 6 bathrooms on the second floor, and we say we're going to take that money from this and put it into bathrooms. That means we don't get this, that we're all on the same page.
I got you. And then the other plan was about 8.5 million without land.
Yes, ma'am. That's
And
right.
so I just want us to know what a whole new facility is compared to retrofitting.
And that was a couple of years ago. So I'd like to reserve the right to round up. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a comment. I would love to see us move forward on this because I think that while the legislative session is happening, we have an opportunity to go to our state legislators and potentially move some of the costs from the citizens of Southport to the state. So I think that I would love to see us vote on this.
I would like to go on the record just to say that my vote today is not for it to be the PD, but instead for it to be to go to the planning board. So my yes vote is with that in mind. And to Ms. Kelly's point, I'm going to go on the record challenging our state legislators to give us money because I don't believe it will happen.
Mr. Spencer? You'll like design. Any other questions? All right, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. We've had a conversation. All in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye and raise your hand. All opposed? It's 4-2. It passes. And Mr. Manager, would you be so kind as to forward it to the chair and vice chair ASAP? Thank you. All right, the next topic is the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. It's been a good, busy, productive few weeks of our new administration working to move the city forward. Just a few quick updates. Staff continues to work with FEMA as we work to get reimbursement from our PTC 8 calls. So we work with them every week on have conference calls with them. Those reimbursements are broken into projects. We have 5 projects, which consist of electrical pole replacement, fire truck maintenance, the park and recreation building that was flooded, also reimbursement for our stormwater system and our payroll costs that we incurred through PTC number 8. So several of these projects have been already filed with them, and we're working through FEMA's process to get fully reimbursed for that. So we're going to ensure that we stay on top of FEMA with our staff to make sure we get all relevant reimbursement from PTC number 8. On the budget, as you know, we held our first budget meeting last week or several weeks ago, kicking off our FY26 budget season. So I'll be working with staff this coming week to set a new process forward on our budget and respond back to the board with looking at scheduling dates for our next several budget work sessions as we move to get a budget for this next fiscal year complete. Finally, a few updates from our public information officer. We're working now to update our city website with our new city website provider. That will provide a nice refresh for our whole website, make it more user friendly for each department. Also incorporating board feedback as well as community feedback to make sure our website's up to date. And lastly, I would ask our public information officer, Cheyenne, to come forward and provide an update. Our new audio visual system in this building in Indian Trail has finally been completed and installed. And so I'll ask her to provide an update on that and how folks can access it going forward, the live streams and recordings.
Thank you, Manager. Board, Mayor, I almost said Mayor of Aldermen, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. Thank you for having me up here. Thank you for your patience, everybody, and people back home. Thank you for your patience. While we have worked through a couple scheduling quirks that occurred over the course of this AV project, we did start about 6 months ago, and then we ran into 3 back-to-back storms, holidays, and then in January, whenever we were going to also do it, we had a snowstorm. So we finally got everything taken care of and set up this past week. So the system is now exactly the same in the Southport Community Building and Indian Trail Meeting Hall. So that means that meetings will be smoother for staff and also for board and remote participants. So I'm super excited about that. How it is working now, it is a Teams meeting. We are on the Microsoft Office suite for the city of Southport. So we're able to utilize some of the tools that we have that we already pay for within that suite, including using Microsoft Teams as our live streaming service. What took so long was getting audio and visual for the rooms that we were fitting for a Teams meeting, basically. So how folks are joining right now this morning is through this is set up as a town hall. So folks are joining via a link that was sent out by text message through our texting service, and then also on Facebook last week, also this morning, and then on the city website. Moving forward, what I am working on doing so that there are additional ways to access the meeting rather than just watching it via Teams. I am working on trying to find a way to make Teams talk to YouTube and Facebook like we have in the past. There's a lot of back-ended stuff that has to happen in order for that to occur, but I'm working with our teams to figure out the best way to do that. But for what was requested of the new AV system sound, I've gotten multiple texts and emails already this morning that the sound is significantly better for the folks back home. So that's check. That was one of our biggest concerns. And then a secondary concern was making sure that when we had remote participants, whether that is board or presenter, that they were able to be seen and heard through this current system. So if I was to join through a Teams meeting and present to you guys, I could share my screen and you would be able to see it. We have 2 screens now.
Their placement is still to be determined. We're going to work on that a little bit and rework some of the seating in here. So those can come out just a little further and be closer on both ends. But that way, both sides of the building are able to see the same information. So somebody back home who Teams is in to present or talk, you will be hearing them at the same volume that you're hearing us in the room right now. They will come through this speaker system and you'll be having a real-time conversation. There is no longer a delay. So we were able to check all of those boxes while also still keeping a way to live stream it for the folks back home. So for the folks back home who are joining, thank you so much for being patient and trying out the new system today. I appreciate you guys. But we are also going to look at splitting that live stream as well. In the interim, this meeting is being recorded. It will be downloaded and it will be uploaded to YouTube sometime today. It's going to be about a 2.5 hour long meeting, so it'll take a second to process, but that will be uploaded and accessible for anybody to watch once we leave here today. So that was a lot, but if you have any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes, ma'am.
We had a public speaker earlier ask about, is our audio ADA compliant?
It is now.
Okay.
So it was satisfactory previously. It is now ADA compliant because Teams requires it.
And another thing, I see the podium is moved, which is wonderful. I mean, used to be that it was at the corner here and the speaker who was speaking to us was actually having to speak to the audience instead of us.
This is not its permanent location, Alderman Davis. I'm so sorry. But while I'm looking at the different screens, there's going to be some shifting. Next Thursday might look a little different. Y'all will still stay the same, but the seating, the podium, it might look a little different. Just continue to have some patience as we figure out the best layout for speakers, for folks who are in the audience. I like it here as well, but it does look kind of weird for our folks back home because it is such a wide angle. So maybe scooting it up a little bit, turning it maybe this way. We're going to work on it, but facing you guys is the primary goal of this podium. So yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
A friend in government calls me once in a while and gives me tasks, tells me from another community. And she was telling me about a program that will scan your website and check all those things to make sure that it's all compliant. Is that something you've used?
Yes. And we're with this new website project, we are in the middle, or we're going to be in the midst of checking all of that 2 and 3 times as well. So there are a couple things we have a very, very large website. So there are a couple of things that we're still kind of digging up from the back end of it. But as of right now, it is as compliant as we can be right now. We do have some fantastic accessibility tools on our website. On any page, if you look at the white banner across the top and go all the way to the right and says accessibility tools, click that and it'll help with some of additional accessibility needs that we may or may not have. I like using it to read to me, like it can read the thing. But yes, we do that currently. We're also working on upgrading it and being even better with what we're doing.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? So when Alderman Carroll is on the ski slope in Colorado, he will be able to dial in to the meeting and actually participate, as opposed to, as much as I like looking at your face and having you wave.
Only if he does it from on the porch of the ski lodge, so that way we can see the view behind him. But yes, in all seriousness, yes. If you're at a conference, you're sick but still able to join in, whatever, we can do that. I'm also happy to do like a work session with the aldermen, like individually or however we need to make that work, manager. Just if we need to look at training for this as well. But it is the same. You would get a link from me, you would come as a presenter, and you even have a green screen. So you don't even have to be on it the whole time if you don't want to. So there's a lot of nice features with this, using it this way, that we didn't have access to prior to now.
Being a Luddite, I will take you up on your offer. And second of all, say hallelujah. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you guys again. Thank you for your patience. Yes, ma'am.
And then if we go in closed session and you're remote, how would that would affect this?
I would recommend still calling in for that. So we have that room set up for it, but going into closed session will not impact it would still be the same as it currently is in here. But I would still recommend calling them in separately just to be extra cautious on a phone, not Teams. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yes, thank you all.
The next is the mayor's comments, and I have two mea culpas. One to the manager, because I had my brain spinning around. In your talk, did you mention the $1.3 million subsets that we talked about? In other words, under potential tropical storm 8, they have found that if you put smaller grants in that are less than 1.37, 1.34, something like that, $1 million grants, they're more likely to be accepted. So what we learned when we were in Raleigh is that people are breaking things into components and moving forward. And I'm sorry if I missed that.
That's right. So each thing that we are getting reimbursed for is classified as its own project, which would be under the 1.3 million. So for example, the electrical pole replacement, that's its own project. We assign it whatever that reimbursement cost is. So that will hopefully move along the process to get us the reimbursement for each project.
Thank you. And the other is I apologize to the board because I asked you to read this document and be familiar with it. And that has to do with the overlay, which is for the 13th and not for today. And I apologize for that. But if you got a head start, you got a head start, because we'll have to have a discussion. And that cannot be in a closed session. That has to be in an open session about where we want to go with that. So I will do that. And I'm going to follow Alderman Mosteller's lead here for a moment. I'm going to read something. Taking it, so as we go through our normal debates and stuff like that, we sometimes lose count of the great things that happen here. And I'm just going to recap just what happens in the last week or so, 2 weeks. We are fortunate to live in a town that has a multitude of activities to broaden and refresh our minds. Last month, I had the opportunity to sit in this very room and take in the joys of the annual Black History Gospel Music event. The place was packed. Yesterday, again in this room, I had the opportunity to enjoy the UNCW Music Department's opera group provide another packed house with an assortment of operatic selections. This was the 22nd year that UNCW has been coming to Southport for such an occasion, and I have to admit, I totally missed it for the first 21 times. But it is on my calendar now. With March 1st, the music season is upon us, like the coming of spring and the reawakening the sounds for our favorite waterfront bars with their excellent selection of musical groups. Town is coming back to life again. On March 7th, the Franklin Square Park Art Gallery will be hosting its Spring Awards benefit. It starts at 5 p.m. So if you have time, you should come to that. You may have noticed on social media that the city is developing its music program for the Franklin Square Park, and they're soliciting for musical groups and stuff like that. So that's all moving in the right direction. And as the weather warms, the first Friday's art gallery walks will afford one and all the opportunity to go outside and mingle with our neighbors. So put the rancor of politics aside for a while and get outside and play. And with that, we have the staff reports are in your thing. Mr. Manager, is there anything that is of note that we should talk about in public for the finance report?
There's not. It's just your monthly revenues and expenditures to date. So just a long financial report, but nothing to highlight there.
All right, I'll start with Alderman Lay. Do you have any comments, sir?
Just one comment. As I was coming in today, I noticed a chasm in the sidewalk out there and talked to Mr. Stanley, and he said that we're in the process of fixing broken sidewalks. So that's something that's needed. Thank you.
Alderman Spencer?
Yes, sir. Most of the time when I get up here, I'm overwhelmed and I'm just trying to write down everything that I need to remember here. We had a cemetery committee meeting last Wednesday, I believe, and they're working on the UDO ordinance. But short term, we've got a problem that we didn't foresee in terms of our water supply for people to be able to water the graves in the area. So we're going and trying to, I believe we're trying to work with the state, the county to get meters on those systems. In the long run, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to handle this water issue, whether we will pay for it, whether it will be paid by usage. But there does need to be a solution. One gentleman's dragging a hose 300 feet to water his wife's grave, and we need to get the water back on. There's several calls from that. So very important. The committee is working hard. There's a lot of things to do. Issues with whether or not to cut Smithfield Cemetery, and John Smith as well. Just conversations that are coming out as to how that contract has been working out. So moving on, the land sale. I will quote my favorite, I'm sorry, Bob, where are you at? My favorite local journalist, Renee Spencer. She wrote an article in October of 23 and talked about how the nonprofit Unique Places to Save had bought 968 acres for $3.6 million. We have 420 acres at $600,000. These numbers would put us at $1.8 million. Just makes sense that that we do talk to this organization, but it doesn't make sense to talk to them until we've finished with a contract that we've got with the state. So to be asked, why haven't we talked to them? Well, it's not the right time, I don't believe. And that would be someone else's job. So there's we've got plenty of money. Why is money a problem? That young lady she hadn't been paying attention to these meetings very often. And she doesn't live in Southport and she doesn't pay taxes. It's hard to have people come in here and tell me what to do when they don't pay taxes. It's very hard. It gets old. Almost like they're bullying us, threatening us. They'll be back. Or they'll illegally support an election and help people get elected, walking around putting stuff on doors to influence our elections. How do y'all like that? That's what they did. They did it. They put it on my mama's door. I know that. We can call her up here and ask her. So be careful what you hear. Just because they say they love the Lord don't mean they're not doing the devil's work. Be careful. Bonnets Creek drain stormwater system. I joked about the hydroelectric dam that we're going to create if we don't fix a bridge. It's going to blow out again. It blows out every storm. It's sort of hard to go backwards. I understand that it's an economic thing. We don't have the money to do what we need. But it sounded like there was a shortfall of a few $100 million in that thing. So I would like to ask for a bridge at Bonnets Creek. See, those were state roads that were going to Wilmington a long time ago, and they built them over estuaries with marl and rock. And they really weren't made to handle what we've got today. So they're replacing one now, just outside of Moore Street. Why can't we get the one at Bonnets Creek fixed too, so we don't flood all those neighbors in there? So I'm just going to keep pounding that away. We need to train our employees to be familiar with the new technologies, especially dealing with large language models or machine language models, ChatGPT, all the different resources. We have a lot of data, and it's hard to just read through it all. When one document might conflict another, I'd like to put those documents in one, unfortunately, brain and see where our discrepancies are. Just like we talk about when laws change and they come back to us and they affect our UDO. How will we change those to agree with the laws? We need to be learning how to use these models. I saw a quote last night. It probably won't be correct because I can't quote anything. But if we don't use it, it will use us. If we don't learn how to use it right now, it will replace us. That's the truth. People don't understand that. Study up. Look at what they're saying. So I want our employees to learn this technology, use it to their advantage, make their jobs easier so they can be more productive. I hear that word out in the community. Why can't we get productivity? We need productivity, and we need new ideas so that we can do things more efficiently. Just like having to have all these police officers, it might not be necessary in the future. So let's keep that in mind. I got some comments about trash cans. People are getting violations for having trash cans out in the right of way. It was a few days afterwards. Are we publicizing that, telling people that those are rules that we need to enforce? Do people understand that before they get in a violation?
Yeah, I looked into that when you called me about that. So the particular one has got a notice on their trash can. It was an initial violation, so we are providing them notice of that before we go to a full violation.
Is that something we want our code enforcement people doing out there, checking trash cans? Everybody, right? Okay.
I do.
Over regulation has got us in trouble. It's got us bitten the behind several times. Just simple, but where will it stop? Last, Alderman Davis, you reminded me last time, my dear son Levi is making his father proud. He has gone and won 4 levels, I think, of the American Legion Oratorical Contest. And I'm sure he gets it from his mother, but he is now going to the state competition for oratorial. His topic is the Supreme Court. He wants to be a Supreme Court justice. God bless him. But he's earning his own keep. He's been making tuition money. And I told him, I love you, son. And all I want you to do, you never have to buy me another Christmas present as long as you live. If you just go ahead and win this thing and get all this tuition money and prove my mama wrong that I'm going to have to work to the day I die to send you to school, you will never have to do anything for me again. So he is on his way. I think the 27th of October, we go to the state competition where he will compete again. And please pray for us because I'm excited for him. He's got a great opportunity. We need to make this opportunity available to other young people, our internships, competitions to learn these large language models. If we don't have an employee that can teach us how to do them, get some young people in here, have a contest and see if we can learn something. So I'm proud for the young people. I don't want it just for Levi. I want all of them to enjoy. And that is a St. James endeavor that's generating that scholarship money. So we have to appreciate our neighbors and never forget that we are neighbors. So if y'all heard enough about me, I was quiet most of the day. So that's it.
Alderman Kelly.
I'd like to thank the city staff for taking care of the new stormwater drains at Lord and 11th. I think we were seeing some potential degradation in the beginning, and we were able to mitigate that right away. So that was fantastic. Thank you for taking care of that. I would like to thank our state legislators for hosting us in Raleigh and having us, not only in their offices, but the mayor and I were able to attend session, and we were announced in session and stood and were applauded, which was a really cool thing while we were there. And then the dinner with the legislators from across the state was a really nice way to go and interact with some of the other municipalities and both representatives and senators from across the state. So that was a great way for Southport to be seen and heard at the state level. So I wanted to thank them for that. And I think that we are moving in the right direction. I'd like to thank this board for all of the discussion today. I think that we're all working hard to make sure we're doing the best that we can for everyone here in the city of Southport. So thank you.
Alderman Davis.
I do have a few things, and I apologize. Like some of you, I'm already thinking about lunch. The 441 acres, we had several people speak about that. And I think the underlying concern was that we might be reneging on the commitment for conservation of that acreage. I can tell you that my vote was based on my realization that this was not an organization that prohibited hunting. And I had foolishly thought that they preserved and protected wildlife, but they do allow hunting, bow hunting, but still. And so I was hoping that we could use a month to seek out the possibility of other organizations, including, as Alderman Spencer noted, unique places to save. They are a non-government, nonprofit organization. They function by acquiring property, and then this is where the rub seems to be, turning it over to a municipality. I may be wrong about that, but their whole concept is conservation. And I hope that by the time we meet on the 13th, we'll have an answer on that. There's also Coastal Conservancy. There are several land conservancy organizations. They may not be able to come up with the money, but at any rate, just to take a breath and see if there was another organization that would be interested, would have the money, and would be able to function. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and want to go forward with that contract. One other thing, public response, our responses to questions asked by people who get up and speak to us and have questions. We had started and then very briefly, we're having board comment after public comment. I'd like us to return to that. I mean, we can also have board comment at the end. And for some of us who are more talkative than others, calm down. This may give us double opportunities to talk, but after public comment, I mean, we all know the answers to some of these things, and to sit here like Easter Island stone faces while people ask us questions really is the wrong approach. So I hope that the city manager and the mayor will ask us all, what do you feel about adding public comment, adding board comment after public comment, if we have anything to say pertinent to the public comment. And
I'm sorry, what was that word?
say again.
Okay.
What?
Relevant.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Yes, we
sure.
do have a good time.
To the public comment.
Alderman Carroll.
In an effort to remain controversial, I just want to agree to disagree with Alderman Davis.
Thank you so much.
So first, on the 441 acres, my comment there, I wasn't going to say anything, but my comment there is that one thing doesn't have to end in order for us to research and study another thing. So we can look at unique places to save while while we still have the contract. So we don't have to wait until the end of March in order to have that conversation. So that kind of short-sightedness, I believe, is what's gotten our municipality into where we are right now. The wheels of city government already turn quite slow. Second, I'm going to read just an excerpt from an email. I want to give two nonprofits credit in this comment, but this project was a true collaboration. The city and the society, being the Historical Society, Southport Historical Society, shared the cost evenly of their Women's History Month banner. The Southport Historical Society provided historical details and photographs of the honorees. The Community Relations Department, over there behind you, y'all are one and the same, but you get it, designed the banners, helping to bring these women's stories to the forefront. The banners will be installed in early March in celebration of Women's History Month, and they will remain for several weeks before Up Your Arts installs their banners. So that's really exciting. Excited to see those up, and the collaboration between city staff and nonprofits. As it relates to our budget, it could not be more clear. I mean, we just talked about $500,000 to $600,000 today. We've talked about millions of dollars tomorrow and into the future, and we want to spend on this land and that land. And, you know, I really think we as a group need to take a step back and look at what that really means. Noah's going to bring us some numbers to take into consideration. But we need to find ways to make money, and that segues into, I believe we all received Jim Varner's email. He works with Surfcast, and they handle the parking management for Oak Island and several other municipalities. I'm going to email each of you a copy of what he sent me in my request for additional information. Now may be the time to think about paid parking. As we move forward, I would suggest that as we think about that, we keep it free for all residents, all business owners, and their employees. Those people are here to serve us, and so the expectation that they're going to have to ride around town to find a paid parking, I don't think we should do that. But I do think that this is an answer for the long-term challenges we face with both parking and our budget. So certainly something we could consider. Kate's Cove. So in one of our last meetings, we decided to not amend the map associated with that community. I would encourage us to instruct city staff to work alongside that HOA to begin a conversation about how we might adopt the streets. It was also recommended during one of our meetings that we actually invest in their stormwater scoping for them. So I don't know if that's a conversation we want to continue, but certainly something we should think about. And I think that's all. That's all I have. Thank you.
Excuse me, Alderman Mosteller.
Thank you, sir. I'm guessing I'm going to talk about the land too, the 427 acres. Alderman Spencer brought up the 3.2 million that was paid for that. That was paid to a developer for a developer willing not to develop it. And so the quality of that land very different than the 427 acres that has the restriction of no structures being able to be built on it that we have with the Matsu land that we have. We also had, just so everybody knows, we did have an appraisal done. So the purchase price is based on an appraisal we had done as well as an appraisal they had done. And oddly enough, they just recorded that conservation easement February 12th for that land. And in it, they do allow hunting. So, but it doesn't say restricted to bow hunting. So sorry, that is for that unique places. So I just know that, and so I certainly advocate continuing to work with, they get their funding from the same place that wildlife, the Water and Land Fund, I think is part of where this funding is coming from. That's who they approach. And any of that would be a long time coming for them to work a project out. It took several years for this project to happen.
I'm going to ask your indulgence to.
Wait, I got one more question. One more thing. I want to talk about the volunteers of the beautification committee. Let me tell you, it was an assembly line on Saturday morning, and they are saving the city money. So the movie set that got disassembled at Potter's, remember when they were doing all that? They offered the wood to beautification. I think Royce kept some, but beautification took it. So Saturday morning, we sanded their stain off of it and they cut it and we did all that. And it's going to be repurposed into picnic tables for the city. So anyway, our volunteers at work, amazing.
That is good news.
Mayor, I'm sorry. I know I like to talk a lot. I do. Parking. Good idea. I like the idea of going in and looking at this. I don't want it to be called paid parking. I want it to be called permit parking. And we've got all our friends around the community that tell us that they live in Southport. 28461. That's St. James, that's Bowling Springs, that's a bunch of places. Bald Head. I want to do business with them more than I want to do business with a random visitor. I want to sell them permits. They deserve to have a discounted rate to come into Southport, shop, spend their money, and be a part of our community. And they'll have an avenue to pay for it. And I'm saying $250 a car, and you don't have to pay a parking spot for those who come daily. I like to travel. I go up to Atlantic City and they have you go swimming for one day. The one day pass will be $10. The week pass will be $20. The year pass will be $50 or $100. Oh, honey, we might be coming back. Let's buy the $100 pass. Might not ever go back, but you spend that $100. Everywhere I go, there's parking and $20 here and $20 there, and I want to be there. Why can't they pay $20 to be here? Are we not proud enough to say we're worth it too? Is Las Vegas more important? Is Atlantic City more important? Is New Orleans more important than Southport? We might want to value ourselves a little bit more and do business with our community rather than opening ourselves up to the outside who really will not pay us anything. So the parking issue is exciting. And I want to include the community around us because like the beach, we get to get our beach passes to go to the beach if we want to go to the beach. If they want to come to Southport, they can.
But there's no discount for you.
I
pay full fare to go up Long Island.
I have a generous soul and spirit and want to include everybody. And I think that St. James, with their 9,000 residents, and I'm sure they got 2 cars and a few garages, they can help us out. They can all help us out. They want to, I'm sure. So thank you for bringing that up, Robert. We're going to work on that. Parking permits, not permitted parking, not paid parking. We'll get the paid people too, but the permits is where the money's at.
Any other comment? Not hearing any, I would entertain.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any conversation? Not hearing any. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.